What if we had that kind of commitment to God? We have to be all in with the Lord's plan. Because retreat is easy if you give yourself the option. Psalm 18 verse 2 says, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold." You know, at some point, we have to decide whether or not we are going to cast our lot with the Lord. I know there are those that struggle making that commitment. They'll commit themselves to God, but then they go back to their old ways and they struggle with that. At some point, you have to decide, I am going to follow Jesus. And just get in with it. I remember the song we used to sing, "I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus." What's the next line? "No turning back. Though none go with me, still I will follow. The cross before me, the world behind me. I have decided to follow Jesus." At some point, that has to go from being, I love the fact that the kids know it. I love the fact that they can sing that song because they're being taught that you have to choose to follow Christ. That you're going to put in with Christ, and whatever it looks like, whatever it takes, you're going to follow Jesus. Danger comes when we attempt to bring about the results that we desire apart from God. When we try to manufacture the way, when we try to make sure that we hold something back in case God doesn't show up. You know, almost like Plan B Christianity. Like if Plan A doesn't work, if what God told us isn't going to work quite the way that we want it to, we've got this Plan B to fall back on. The men in the boat in Paul's story are working on their Plan B. Back in verse 31, it says, "And the sailors were seeking to escape from the ship when they had let down the skiff into the sea under the pretense of putting out anchors from the prow." They were just trying to say, well, we're just going to go do this thing, but really, they were trying to make their escape. And Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, "Unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved." Apparently they believed him because in verse 32 it says, "Then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the skiff and let it fall off." They got rid of their Plan B and decided to trust God to be their deliverer, God to be their strength. We too can shipwreck ourselves if we choose not to trust God. What does that look like? Planning our escape if the God thing doesn't work out. What are we going to do if God doesn't show up? In 1519, the Spanish explorer and conquistador Hernando Cortez decided that he wanted to seize the treasure that the Aztecs had been hoarding. Now, if you know anything about the Aztecs, they had treasure worth seizing. He took 500 soldiers and 100 sailors and landed his 11 ships on the shores of the Yucatan. Despite the large army that he had, he was still outnumbered by the huge and powerful empire that had been around for 600 years. Some of his men were unconvinced of their ability to be successful. They tried to seize some of the ships to escape to Cuba. When Cortez heard about this, he captured the ringleaders, and he wanted to make sure that the rest of the men were completely committed to the mission that was before them, the quest for riches. So he did something that seemed insane to his people. Cortez gave the order to scuttle his own ships, to burn the ships. Don't even give them an option for retreat. The path forward was clear for Cortez. All or nothing. 100% commitment. The option of failure was gone. Conquer as a hero or die trying. So the ships were sunk. He kept one so he could send back the tribute to the king, the royal fifth that Spain claimed of all treasure that was found. By doing this, the level of the commitment of the men was raised to an extreme level because they had no other option, no other way to go. Much higher than anyone could have imagined. And incredibly, they succeeded in defeating the Aztecs. In 600 years, no one else had been able to conquer the Aztecs and plunder their riches. But they were able to do it simply because there was no choice There was no fallback, no plan B. All the ships were gone. The only alternative to victory was death. What if we had that kind of commitment today? What if we had that kind of commitment to God? We have to be all in with the Lord's plan. Because retreat is easy if you give yourself the option. If you give yourself a way out when things even start to get rough, you're going to take that off ramp. When we plan our escape in case God doesn't show up, God won't show up. Because your faith is not in Him. And so we have to cast our lot with Christ. You know, we talked a little bit earlier in Deuteronomy 31 on how Joshua became the leader after Moses. And Joshua led the children of Israel into the promised land. At the end of Joshua in chapter 24, he makes a statement about who are you going to choose to serve? Are you going to choose God or not? Here's what he says in verse 15. And if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. And then he says, you know what? I'm going to burn the ships. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Paul eventually made it to Rome. There's more to his story. Can I tell you this morning that your story is not finished? Regardless of what you're walking through, regardless of where you find yourself in, if you're in a bad situation or not, we need to trust in God because He has not abandoned us. And we need to look to God because He will provide that assurance. And then we need to wait on God because He is our strength and our deliverer. Paul was shipwrecked, but he wasn't shipwrecked. Yeah, the boat may have sunk, but his story wasn't over because God was for him. You may find yourself in a situation where you think, there's just no way out of this. There's just no way that this is going to turn around and work out for me. You may feel shipwrecked, but you don't have to be shipwrecked.